Okay, so we're going to talk about the template list. So here under lists, where we go for all our lists, right? We come down to templates. Now the template list is going to be if you look at it when you first start up in QuickBooks, you're going to have a whole bunch of stuff in there that Intuit creates for you to try to be helpful. But of course, the more you have on this list, the more opportunity your users have to choose the wrong thing, right? So I definitely recommend going in on your customers, your own, but inactivate some of these extra templates that you're not going to be using, right? Because if I have, again, all these standard Intuit ones, into a packing list, into a product invoice, professional invoice, when I go to create an invoice, I have all of those options here, right? So again, user error is a potential if you allow them to have these options in here, or if you have these options for them to possibly choose. So if you're only using one or two templates, go in and make the other templates inactive, right? So right click, make inactive. Now that doesn't delete them from the system. You can't delete these, but it makes them so that they don't show up on the list anymore, right? So now when I go to create invoice, not on my list anymore. Okay, so it helps us, right, to eliminate options so that we have, fewer opportunities for human error. Okay, so then once you've narrowed it down just to the templates that you're using, so you can see in here all the different template types that I have as options. So I have an invoice, I have a credit memo, sales receipt, PO, estimate, sales order. So generally when I'm going through with my customers and creating their templates in the beginning, right, we start with one. So I take Fourlane invoice as an example. I add the logo. I do whatever I need to do with all the rest of the stuff in here. This one's pretty messy because, of course, in our demos, we go through all sorts of stuff. But I add it in all the information I want. I get it in the right format, the right coloring scheme with the right, background, the right language that we want across the bottom. And I have it for invoice. But now what do? I need it for sales order. I need it for PO, right? So from this list here, I can come in and you can't do it from here where you right click, right? But I can come in here, I have to highlight it, and I can duplicate it. So I have to go down to the templates list down here and create a duplicate. Now when I duplicate it, it will say, well, how do you, what kind of template are you using this for? So I have it for my invoice. It's all set up perfect, but I want to use it also the same formatting on my sales order. So I'm going to create a duplicate for sales order. So what does it do? Down here it says copy of Fourlane invoice, and it makes it a sales order. Okay, so I'll want to go in there. First of all, I want to manage my templates, right? Instead of calling it copy of Fourlane, I want to call it, Fourlane SO. All right, the second thing that you have to be really aware of when you do that is it duplicates it exactly the same. So it still says invoice up there. So when we go to additional customizations, right, we want to change that from saying invoice to saying sales order number, right? So there are some things in there that you have to change, okay? You have to be aware of that. Okay, but that way you don't have to go in and recreate, especially if you've done a lot of formatting, a lot of color changes. You don't have to recreate that template over and over and over again. All right, so of course from the template list here, we also can duplicate things like purchase orders if we have multiple purchase orders. You want to make sure that when you're creating your templates, you're not going overboard, right? There should be a real reason for creating multiple invoice templates as an example. So reasons I've seen in the past for people are, let's say that they have 3 offices. They have an office in Houston, New York, and somewhere in Florida. And so in the 3 offices, they want it to they want their invoice to reflect the local office's contact information. Okay, so that's a good reason to maybe have 3 different invoices. Now you can't force it and say, Joey, who's in Florida, always uses our Florida Fourlane template. You can't force it through like that. But what's nice about it is that when you're in QuickBooks, you use it one time. So as a user, me, Marjorie, I'm logged in as a user. I go in and I choose, I get rid of all these pop-ups, and I choose a different template. Let's say I'm going to use the packing slip template for whatever reason. When I use it one time, right? And I save it. Okay. Now it's going to remember what template I use whenever, like the previous time I used a template when I created an invoice. So I go into create an invoice again, it's going to pull it up for packing slip for me, right? So you can't force it through to a user to say, who uses a Florida versus a Houston versus, New York or whatever. But you can go in, they use it one time, and then the next time it'll default for them to that template. So again, if I changed it back to Fourlane invoice, cancel, I added some plans, I said save and new. Again, it's going to default to this template for me because it was the last one I used. Okay, so now, it's a little workaround in there. All right, if you have not gone in and watched the video about customizing your templates, it's really important to do that, I feel. Don't just use the standards, add your logo, make sure that it's yours so that your customer knows who it's coming from. Also, make sure it's yours so that maybe the customer doesn't recognize that it's a QuickBooks invoice template or a QuickBooks PO template. Sometimes people really care about that. They don't want their, vendors to know what their accounting software is or whatever. All right, so that's our template list.